The Untold Files.
August 17th, 1948. 2:34 in the morning. A scream cut through Harlem like a razor dragging across skin. Not the scream of surprise, not the scream of fear, the scream of a soul being torn in half. It came from an alley behind the Red Rooster on 138th Street. Narrow, brick-walled, the kind of place where the city's filth collects and nobody looks twice. But Harlem heard that scream, and when Harlem hears a woman scream like that, the streets wake up. 3 minutes later, Illinois Gordon, one of Bumpy Johnson's lieutenants, was the first to reach her. He found her crumpled against the alley wall, dress torn, blood on her thighs, eyes staring at nothing. Her name was Clara Johnson, 22 years old, Bumpy's cousin, a night shift nurse at Harlem Hospital, a girl who sang in the choir at Abyssinian Baptist every Sunday. She wasn't just violated, she was erased. Illinois knelt beside her, took off his jacket, wrapped it around her shoulders. "Clara," he whispered. "Who did this?" She couldn't speak, but her hand, shaking, trembling, barely able to hold a pencil, scratched 4 letters into the dirt beside her. KKK. K. Illinois looked at those letters. Then he looked up at the Harlem sky, dark, starless, unforgiving, and he whispered 2 words that would echo through the next 72 hours, oh God. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a reckoning. Drop a comment and tell me, where are you listening from? New York? Atlanta? London? Lagos? Let me know you're here. Let me know you're paying attention. This channel is about untold history, the stories they don't teach in school, the justice that happened in the shadows, the protection that came when the law turned its back. Now let's go back to that alley, because 72 hours after Clara Johnson whispered those 4 letters, 6 men would be found alive, but they would never speak again. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson didn't sleep that night. He stood in his apartment on Edgecombe Avenue, looking out over Harlem, a glass of whiskey in his hand, untouched. They brought Clara to his place at 3:15 a.m. Illinois and 2 other men carried her up the stairs, wrapped in blankets, still shaking. Bumpy's wife, Mame, took Clara into the bedroom, closed the door. Bumpy stood in the hallway and listened to her cry. He didn't move, he didn't speak, he just listened. And when the crying stopped, when Clara finally fell asleep from sheer exhaustion, Bumpy walked into his study, closed the door, and made a phone call. One call, to a man named Marcus Smooth Williams. "I need names," Bumpy said. "I need faces. I need addresses." "How many?" Marcus asked. "All of them." Marcus didn't ask why. He knew, because in Harlem, there were rules. You could deal drugs. Bumpy would tax you, but he wouldn't stop you. You could run numbers. Bumpy would take his cut, but he wouldn't interfere. You could fight, steal, hustle, cheat. But you never, not once, not ever, touched a woman. And you damn sure didn't touch family. The Klan thought Harlem was just another neighborhood they could terrorize. They thought wrong. Here's what most people don't know. The Ku Klux Klan wasn't just a Southern phenomenon. In 1948, there were active Klan cells in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, northern cities where black folks had migrated during the Great Migration, looking for work, looking for freedom. And the Klan followed them. In Harlem, they called themselves the White Knights of Harlem. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? White Knights in a black neighborhood? But that's the point. Terror doesn't need to make sense. It just needs to exist. They operated out of a warehouse in the Bronx, about 15 men, low-level enforcers, dock workers, off-duty cops. They'd drive into Harlem at night, looking for targets. Lone women walking home from work, young men standing on corners, anyone they could intimidate, humiliate, destroy. They thought they were invisible. They thought Harlem was too fractured, too poor, too powerless to fight back. But they didn't know about Bumpy, and they didn't know that in Harlem, information moved faster than blood. By sunrise on August 17th, Marcus Smooth Williams had 6 names. He walked into Bumpy's study at 6:47 a.m., laid a folder on the desk. Inside, Gerald Hoffman, 34, dock worker, lives in the Bronx, drinks at O'Malley's Tavern on Fordham Road. Patrick Murphy, 29, nip-de-beat cop, 42nd Precinct, married, 2 kids. Vincent Calabrese, 41, warehouse foreman, Italian-American, Klan recruiter. Robert Bobby Sullivan, 26, truck driver, violent drunk, 3 prior arrests. James Donnelly, 38, mechanic, owns a garage in Yonkers. Thomas Fletcher, 31, postal worker, lives with his mother. Marcus didn't ask how Bumpy wanted to handle it. He already knew. How long? Bumpy asked, flipping through the photos. 72 hours, Marcus said. Maybe less. Bumpy nodded. Make it quiet, he said. No bodies, no headlines, no martyrs. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Then what? Bumpy looked out the window at Harlem waking up. Vendors setting up fruit stands, kids heading to school, women sweeping stoops. I want them alive, Bumpy said, but I want them gone. Marcus understood. Death was mercy. What Bumpy had in mind was something else. Pause for a second. If you're still here, if you're locked in, leave a comment right now. Tell me, do you think Bumpy went too far or not far enough? Because this is where the story gets heavy, and I need to know you're ready. Hit that like button if you believe justice doesn't always come from a courtroom. Now let's talk about what happened over the next 3 days. August 17th, 1948, 11:30 p.m. Gerald Hoffman left O'Malley's Tavern drunk, as usual. He stumbled toward his car, fumbling with his keys. He never saw the 2 men step out of the shadows. They didn't say a word, just chloroform. 30 seconds. Gone. August 18th, 1948, 2:15 a.m. Patrick Murphy finished his beat, walked toward the precinct parking lot. A black Cadillac pulled up beside him. Officer Murphy? He turned. The last thing he saw was the barrel of a .38 pointed at his chest. Get in. He got in. August 18th, 1948, 4 a.m. Vincent Calabrese was dragged out of his bed by 4 men wearing masks. His wife screamed. One of the men turned to her, calm as Sunday morning. He'll be home soon. He wouldn't. By dawn on August 18th, 3 of the 6 were gone. Nip didn't notice Murphy was missing until his shift started at 8 a.m. His sergeant called his house. His wife answered, hysterical. They took him. 4 black men took him. The sergeant hung up and did absolutely nothing. August 18th, 1948, 10:00 p.m. Robert Sullivan was yanked off a bar stool at McGinty's pub in the Bronx. Nobody intervened. Nobody called the cops because the bartender knew Bumpy's people, and he knew not to ask questions. August 19th, 1948, 1:30 a.m. James Donnelly was closing up his garage in Yonkers when the lights went out. He reached for his wrench. A voice in the dark. Drop it. He dropped it. August 19th, 1948, 3 a.m. Thomas Fletcher was the last. He was pulled from his mother's house in Riverdale. She ran into the street, screaming his name. One of Bumpy's men turned to her, tipped his hat, and said, "He'll be fine, ma'am. Just fine." Technically, he was telling the truth. There's an abandoned meatpacking plant on the edge of the South Bronx, used to process beef in the 30s, shut down in 42. By 1948, it was just rust, rats, and silence. Perfect. August 19th, 1948, 6 a.m. All 6 men woke up in that warehouse, tied to chairs, gagged, blindfolded. The smell of old blood and diesel fuel. They heard footsteps. 1 man, walking slow. The blindfolds came off, and they saw him. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, 51 years old. 6 feet tall, dressed in a charcoal suit, tie perfectly knotted, fedora tilted just so. He stood in front of them, hands behind his back, studying them like a teacher studies a failing student. Then he spoke. "You know who I am?" Silence. "Let me make this simple," Bumpy said. "You violated someone I love. You thought Harlem was weak. You thought you could run." He stepped closer. "You were wrong. What happened next took 6 hours. I'm not going to describe every detail, because some things don't need to be said. But here's what you need to know. A doctor was present, a man named Dr. Vernon Hayes, one of the few black surgeons in New York, a man who'd seen the worst of humanity and never flinched. He brought medical-grade anesthesia, surgical tools, bandages, antiseptic, everything needed to keep men alive through what was about to happen. Bumpy didn't want them to die. He wanted them to live with what they'd done, live with the consequences, live knowing that every time they looked in a mirror, every time they tried to be men again, they would remember Clara Johnson, live knowing that the code they violated had a price, and that price wasn't death, it was worse. By noon on August 19th, 1948, all 6 men had been surgically castrated. They were bandaged, sedated, stabilized. Dr. Hayes worked with clinical precision, ensuring they would survive, ensuring they would heal, ensuring they would live long lives with the constant reminder of what they'd done. And then, one by one, they were driven back to their homes and left on their doorsteps. Alive, breathing, but never the same. Here's the thing about that kind of punishment. It sends a message louder than any murder ever could. Because a dead man can't talk. But a broken man? A broken man becomes a warning. Over the next 72 hours, word spread through every Klan cell in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. The message was clear. Touch Harlem, and you'll wish you were dead. Not one of those 6 men ever spoke publicly about what happened. Not to the police, not to their families, not to reporters. Patrick Murphy resigned from the NIP 3 weeks later. No explanation, just turned in his badge and disappeared. Gerald Hoffman moved to Pennsylvania within a month, changed his name, never came back to New York. Vincent Calabrese's wife left him, took the kids, filed for divorce. He died alone in a VA hospital in 1967. The other 3 scattered to the wind. Some say Bobby Sullivan drank himself to death by 1952. Some say James Donnelly became a recluse, never left his house again. Thomas Fletcher's mother found him in the garage in 1950, a rope around his neck. But none of them, not one, ever told the full story, because the shame was too deep, and the fear was too real. If you made it this far, thank you. This isn't an easy story to tell, but it's a necessary story, because history isn't just kings and presidents. It's the people who protected their own when no one else would. Drop a comment. What do you think justice looks like? And if you want more untold stories from Harlem's golden age, stories of power, protection, and principle, subscribe, share. Honor the ancestors, because these stories deserve to be told. Clara Johnson never fully recovered. She left Harlem in 1950, moved to Philadelphia, lived a quiet life. She never married, never had children, never spoke about that night. But she lived. She became a nurse practitioner, worked at a community clinic in West Philadelphia for 30 years, helped hundreds of women, saved lives, and every year on August 17th, she would light a candle and sit in silence, remembering, grieving, but also knowing that her family had protected her. That justice, however dark, however brutal, had been served. She died in 1998, at the age of 72, surrounded by friends who never knew her story. At her funeral, there was a single card with no signature, just 8 words: Harlem never forgot. Harlem never will. Rest easy. Bumpy's people had kept watch over her for 50 years. Bumpy Johnson never confirmed the story, But in 1963, a journalist asked him about the rumors, about the 6 men, about the warehouse, about the message sent to the Klan. Bumpy smiled, that slow, knowing smile, and said, "In Harlem, we take care of our own. Always have, always will. You protect your family. You protect your neighborhood. You protect your people. And when someone crosses that line, when they think they can terrorize, violate, destroy, you remind them that there are consequences, not from the law, not from the courts, but from the people who live here, the people who built this place, the people who refuse to be afraid." The journalist pressed him. "But the rumors are just rumors," Bumpy said. "But let me tell you something true. The Klan thought they could come to Harlem and do whatever they wanted, thought we were powerless, thought we'd just take it. They were wrong. And after 1948, they didn't come back. That's not a rumor. That's a fact. And the White Knights of Harlem? They dissolved by 1949. Their warehouse in the Bronx burned down under mysterious circumstances in October of 1948, 2 months after Clara May was attacked. Their recruitment dried up. Their meetings stopped. Their members scattered. Some moved south. Some changed their names. Some just disappeared. Because Harlem sent a message that echoed for decades, we are not prey. We are not victims. We are not afraid. Touch us, and you will pay a price that no law, no judge, no jury would ever impose. The streets have their own justice, and it's older, deeper, and more final than anything written in a courtroom. By 1950, FBI documents show that Klan activity in Harlem and the surrounding boroughs had dropped by over 70%. Recruitment efforts failed. Intimidation campaigns evaporated. The reign of terror over. And while the FBI credited increased police presence and community organizing, people in Harlem knew the truth. They knew about the 6 men. They knew about the warehouse. They knew about Bumpy. And they knew that sometimes justice doesn't wear a badge. Sometimes it wears a fedora. In 1968, when Bumpy Johnson died, thousands attended his funeral. Preachers, politicians, hustlers, musicians, working people. And in the crowd, standing quietly in the back, was an older woman in a black dress and veil. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't approach the casket, just stood there, tears streaming down her face. When the service ended, she placed a single white rose on the steps of the church and walked away. Someone asked Illinois Gordon, who was standing nearby, who she was. Illinois watched her disappear into the crowd, and he said quietly, someone he saved. That woman was Clara May Johnson, and she'd traveled from Philadelphia to say thank you, to say goodbye, to honor the man who had loved her enough to risk everything, who had broken every rule, crossed every line, and defied every law to make sure she could sleep at night. That's what protection looks like. That's what family means. And that's why, even now, more than 70 years later, people in Harlem still tell the story, still whisper the names, still remember the night when 6 men learned that terror has a price and mercy has limits.